Following the release of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, many were left with questions, with one being how did N come into possession of the Sword of the End across multiple incarnations. While the DLC expansion Future Redeemed answered many questions, this one in particular not only remained a mystery, but put into further question with developments that occurred late in the story. The reveal of the new Macaw and Matthew's gauntlets, and the implication that the Logos core being within the sheath of N's Sword of the End, has left many now questioning why he is in possession of it. The answer lies in an examination of the nature of the Logos core and N, or rather Noah. Before that, however, some groundwork must be done in establishing the agency that a Trinity processor core possesses in Ionios. The opening cutscene of Future Redeemed depicts the day Alpha suddenly appeared and attempted to wipe out any life not born from the city. During this confrontation, Zed refers to Alpha, a manifestation of the Ontos core, as a god. Due to showing the same role as members of the Trinity processor, it stands to reason that Logos and Numa would also deserve such a title. After dispatching N to attack the city and thwart Alpha's plan, Zed ponders how N came into possession of the Sword of the End. He deduces that Origin contains the will of those who are as unto gods. Taking this conclusion, and knowing who Zed sees as gods, it can be understood that N came into possession of the Logos core sheath due to the will of the core itself. As people that are close to her are lost and the nature of the world bears its weight down on her, Niall's contempt for the Kavessian Agnian soldiers and loathing for Ionios as a whole only grows. This state of mind makes Niall the perfect avatar for Alpha, as he intends to take life born from the city and move on to a new world, annihilating Ionios and those remaining in his wake. These shared values are why the Ontos core appears before Niall. Following the concept that the Trinity cores appear before individuals with ideals in line with their own, the question must be asked, what does the Logos core deem as important? In Greek philosophy, Logos refers to the principle of logical-based reasoning, which is driven by the desire to understand the universe in which we inhabit. This notion is naturally associated with the desire for the truth, as without the truth there is no foundation for logic to be upheld. However, name alone isn't enough to definitively state the Logos core's values, so a deeper dive must be taken into previous entries in the series, namely Xenoblade 2 and Torn of the Golden Country. As described by Klaus, the Logos core is an artificially intelligent information processing unit. As a member of the Trinity processor, his role was to collect and process data with an inclination towards logic and reason. This data would then be transmitted along with that obtained by the Numa core, who appealed towards emotional-based thought. These two inputs would be received by Ontos, who would act as an arbiter and use this information to make decisions. This fundamental thought process was carried over to Malus as the Logos core personified. As a man capable of learning and forming connections with others, the desire for the truth and an understanding of the world he inhabits is no longer his sole characteristic, yet it still remains as a guiding force which shapes his thoughts and actions. The clearest examples of this are during the events of Torn of the Golden Country. At this point in time, Malus is at his most confident. With complete certainty, he believes his purpose as an Aegis is to descend upon the world and eliminate every last human. During his initial attack on Oresco, it is noted his mission objective is different from the Titans he has previously vanquished. Instead of using Siren to rain down death from the heavens, he chooses to overload the Torn Titan's core. The end result is the same, yet there is a fundamental difference in the methods, that being the latter exposes the truth. The Torn Titan's true form has been hidden, and Malus cannot stand it, so he feels compelled to lay that truth bare for everyone to see. During his first encounter with the party, he easily overpowers them even with Mithra on their side. Malus takes the key to the core and at this point could overload the Titan relatively unchallenged, yet he doesn't. Throughout this battle, blades weren't the only thing crossing. Adam and Mithra would exchange words with Malus, drawing attention to the bond that each human held with their blades. What Malus saw was Mithra, an Aegis, holding herself back and refusing the idea that their purpose was to enact divine judgment upon all rest. Not only is Mithra hiding her true self in the form of her potential, but her forming bonds with humans is denying the truth of their purpose. Unbeknownst to Malus, Mithra is harboring doubts regarding her role. She is terrified that Malus is perhaps correct, but regardless he sees an opportunity to convince Mithra, which will ultimately break her. Standing on the town of Oresco, Malus decides to set up a scenario where either way he wins. If Mithra fails to stand up to him, he follows through with the initial goal of destroying the Torn Titan. However, if she does put up a fight, the conflict will force her to draw upon the true depths of her power, revealing that Malus was correct and their purpose as an Aegis was purely to destroy, as that is the only way to defeat him. Throughout the battle at the soaring rostrum, Malice goads Mithra into delving deeper and deeper into her potential for power, slowly but surely convincing her that the only reality of her was what he had put forth. After Malice turns Oresco to flames and glass, Mithra loses control and reveals her supposed true self in the form of her destructive capabilities, which delights Malice as she is no longer holding back. However, the battle takes an unexpected turn for him as there was something more to this power that she had unlocked. This one unaccounted for variable sent him plummeting into the Cloud Sea. Despite the outcome, he had won the ideological conflict as Mithra had accepted Malice's perspective as the truth and spent the next 500 years broken and full of hate, loathing, and disgust for herself. Malice's journey would not end at the bottom of the Cloud Sea, though he would emerge as merely a shell of his former self. Despite convincing Mithra, he himself was now unsure on the purpose of an Aegis. What was he missing, and what set him apart from Mithra during their battle? The truth was that those bonds he dismissed with as little as a punch and a shake of the wrist were the key. The emotional attachment Mithra had to Milton, and witnessing his potential demise in Oresco is what gave her access to the heightened level of power. Even though he didn't know the reason why she had unlocked this power, the difference in potential put into question his entire view of himself. So, doing what the personification of the Logos core would, in his search for an ever greater understanding of the world around him and himself, he tried to find the answers by forming connection with others, gaining new perspectives. This pursuit would lead him to a back alley in Moradane, where he would find a broken man devoid of purpose, just like him. His connection with Jin and founding the group Torna would set him on the path to the peak of the World Tree. Other than destroying all humans, the reason for this journey was to get the answer to his purpose. As he ventured to the Architect, this answer would change multiple times, yet regardless of his views being shattered, he still pushed on until he reached his final answer. At Death's Door, the Logos core within that provided the foundation for his character and drove his actions had at last been satisfied upon discovering, or more so choosing, his true purpose. He had finally an understanding for himself and what his role in this world was. That being, to be the obstacle that those fighting for the future had to overcome. Malice's overall arc across both entries and interactions with Mithra and Torna of the Golden Country are certainly the clearest examples of the Logos core's characteristics, yet there are still plenty others. The actions of Malice, the Logos core personified, certainly do line up with the role the Logos core played in the Trinity processor and adequately display the ideals it values, those being the ever-present desire for understanding and naturally the truth. With these qualities in mind, what makes M the ideal candidate for the Logos core? N's possession of the Logos core predates him becoming Mobius, having it equipped in multiple incarnations before the one that chose the path of the Endless now. Noah has unknowingly partaken in multiple final battles against Mobius, and failed every time, yet with each incarnation he would rise again to take a stand. It can be speculated that with each incarnation the core would appear before him, and it was only after N became Mobius that this cycle ceased as he hadn't reincarnated, cementing his possession of it until he merged with Noah during the events of Xenoblade 3. There was a quality intrinsic to Noah that put him in that position, and this path would always have the same beginning. It would first begin by him questioning his position in the world and its nature. While the thematic core of Xenoblade 3 is bringing forth the courage to step forward into an uncertain future in the hope of a better world, the only way to come to that conclusion is to first question the world you're in. What is fundamentally wrong with it that needs to change? To know this, one must come to a proper understanding of their surroundings and the factors at play. Only then will they know what must be done. This pursuit is the very embodiment of the desire for the truth, and that is the foundation of the Logos core. Following the line of thought that our Noah and all the incarnations of the same person under different circumstances, Chapter 1 of Xenoblade 3 showcases the beginning of this journey. After Vandam ends the battle between the Kavesi and Agnian trios, he questions their rationale for fighting. Tyon calls the Kavesi filth, Lan says the Agnians take everything from them, Uni believes that they aren't even just because they both lost people, and Mio simply sees an enemy so she fights, not even questioning why. The only one that doesn't throw around culpability is Noah, drawing attention to the fact that they kill others simply because they have to as their means of living. He despises the fact that they were given Noah the choice, and wants to know who is behind the system that forces them to only ever kill. The fact that only Noah has a grasp on the reality of their situation, despite also being a soldier like the rest of them, is due to him being far more considerate of his circumstances than anyone else. In a world full of people ignorantly slaughtering each other by the masses, who better for the Logos core to appear before than the one that is able to move beyond that mindset through a drive for properly understanding the context he resides in. This reflection and realization would have happened countless times, across every single incarnation. Regardless of the way in which his conclusions were given credence, the pursuit of the real enemy and further information about Ionios would ring into the city. Here, Noah would be given the answers he sought, the purpose of the flame clocks and how they fueled Mobius to perpetuate the cycle of the soldiers' conflict. Along with this, he would learn the way life is meant to be and what the system enforced by Mobius stole from them. Noah's final incarnation, our Noah, followed the same path of his predecessors. Before his march on Origin, he was met with one final hurdle, a test of his conviction. Chris puts forth that there is no guarantee the worlds will merge correctly once Origin is rebooted, essentially parroting the ideals of Mobius and their fear of an uncertain future. Senna, who had been partaking in this argument, is left with little words to refute his point, yet Noah does not show any uncertainty in his response, having deliberated his answer for quite some time now. Everything he considered, everything he learnt, and everything he internalized has shaped his worldview and used as fuel to drive his truth. Noah plays his answer for Chris not in a battle of weapons, but rather words founded on an understanding of the world. Living up to his weapon's new name, Truthsinger, Noah proclaims that Zed's world of Ionios restricts those who inhabit it, leaving them with no choices or opportunities to become something more, to the point that it breaks them. Noah learned this through the many people he lost in Ethel, Yoren, Chris, and Mio, who all had the same smile, one of content and hope for the future. Though this smile was the only one they could choose and demonstrated the limitations presented by the world. Learning how those that reside in Ionios are held back by the system in place to act as a catalyst for him to want to change it. The core motivator for Noah's actions being established through his continuing desire to understand others in conjunction with him always questioning the nature of the world and how it impacts himself and others is what makes him the perfect candidate for the Logos core. Having conquered and merged with N, the wielder of the Logos core, by helping him move forward again, when Noah reaches the grand theatre of life in Origin, his perspective is so rigorously thought out and tested that nothing Zed says can even make him flinch or doubt his beliefs. Noah, as the perfect avatar for the Logos core, makes the ultimate declaration to Zed, one that is the antithesis to the idea of the truth which the Logos core values so highly.
This is all a sham!